Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is our first ever Lunch and Learn virtual presentation, so I'm so excited that we're able to bring this to all of you students that are joining us. First and foremost, you guys are welcome to message any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll make sure that we get those questions to our wonderful attorneys that are here with us. And second, if you'll please hang on to the very end of this, the attorneys would definitely like the chance to get to see your bright shining faces and maybe take a group photo. I'll make this announcement again later on in our presentation, but thank you all for joining us. Thank you, wonderful, gracious attorneys, for joining us. We're so thankful to have you. This is such a treat. And you'll be delighted to know that a lot of our participants have ties to UTA as well, and I'll let them share with you all about that. So with that, I will introduce our first attorney, Miss Alexandra Guio, excuse me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I am actually really excited to do this because I'm an alumni of UT Arlington. So this is actually kind of like heartwarming to feel like, I say coming back, I know it's virtual, but to come back and be able to do this. So I want to I know you guys got our bios, but I wanted to be able to let you guys know just a little bit more about me. I am a first generation college graduate, the first attorney in my family. So I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I came here when I was 4. I grew up in Katy, Texas, which is down in Houston. It's a big football town. And so then I was trying to get away from Houston, and I got accepted to UTA, and I loved it. I loved it because of its diversity. So when I went to UTA, I did have kind of an idea that I wanted to become a lawyer. I just had no idea how I was going to get there. I was really lucky in that I had great professors. I had assistance from the professors that were helping me, that were guiding me, that were letting me even know what the LSAT was, what the application process was like. So I was really lucky in that I had plenty people who were helping me kind of guide me through that way. So I graduated from UTA, and I actually ended up taking a year off between college and law school. I really needed to save money, make a lot of money. So I worked 2 jobs during that year in between. And then I went to SMU. I stayed in Dallas. I did apply to many law schools. It was just kind of like a blanket all over the nation type thing. But I found it kind of best to stay within the DFW area. And I knew I wanted to become a prosecutor. I mean, my major at UTA was criminal justice. So this was kind of like, I knew I liked criminal justice area, and I knew I liked public speaking and kind of advocacy. So it was the blend of 2 things that I loved. That's how I kind of ended up in prosecution. And so every summer that I had available at law school, even some semesters, one of the other attorneys, Jerry, I'm sure he probably got sick of seeing me every summer, every semester possible. I was there because I really wanted to get hired there. So after law school, I did get hired there. So I've been at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office now for 7 years. I've been in various divisions, misdemeanor and felony. I was in the sexual assault division for about 2 years. A year of that was in the cold case division. So I did what's the untested rape kits. And after that, I was in a felony court handling all kinds of cases, from robberies to murders to drug cases. And so now I am in the intake grand jury division. So that's when the police department submit the cases to us. We look at it and make sure they meet the elements. And then we present felony cases to the grand jury and get them through the indictment process. So my goal today is to hopefully let you guys know that there's many different ways to kind of get from college to becoming a lawyer, becoming a prosecutor, and to hopefully alleviate any concerns you guys may have and answer any questions you guys may have. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Definitely look forward to hearing your presentation. For those of you just joining us, Alexandra was a UTA alumnus, and she's happy to share her experiences with you all. Next up, we have attorney Sunni Mitchell.
Hi guys, as Amber said, my name is Sunni Mitchell. I am currently a prosecutor at the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Office, which is in the Houston area. I have been a prosecutor in November. I will have been a prosecutor for 27 years, which is really hard to believe. But I graduated from the University of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas City, although I was born in New York. I went to the University of Kansas and got a double major there in psychology and crime and delinquency studies. And I went straight through to law school, primarily because I was afraid if I didn't go straight through, I wouldn't go. So I went to law school also, like Alex, at SMU. I graduated from SMU in 1992, and I did contract work for about a year before I went to the Harris County District Attorney's Office in Houston and worked there for 23 years. I went kind of starting at the bottom. Everybody there started in misdemeanor. I handled misdemeanor cases until I went up to the felony division. And then you kind of just elevate yourself there, getting promoted, ultimately became a division chief at the Harris County DA's office in the trial bureau, as well as handling the child abuse division. So I did both of those, and then I left there in January of 2017 and went to the Williamson County District Attorney's Office in Georgetown, Texas, where I was the trial division chief. And it was a very small office, which was very different from Harris County for me, but a really unique and rewarding experience working with a small group of lawyers there from start to finish, handling cases. Spent 3.5 years there, and now I am, like I said, at the Fort Bend County DA's office, and I'm doing child abuse and human trafficking, which is very rewarding work. It's eye-opening. I've never handled human trafficking cases, but I'm really learning a lot and really enjoying it. So I look forward to talking to you guys a little bit further down the road and talking to you a little bit about my path to where I am.
Thank you so much, Sunni. I already have questions for you, my goodness. Next up, we have attorney Jerry Varney, also of Dallas County. Jerry.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having us again, and I appreciate you guys making time for us. Please, if you do have questions, go ahead and get them ready and put them in the chat or start forming them in your mind, because we really do want to, help you guys with anything we can, in any way we can assist. Again, my name is Jerry Varney. Been with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office since 2004, so it'll be 16 years later this year. And it's very similar to what Sunni and Alex described. I went to high school actually at Arlington High School, right down the street from UTA. My parents still live over there, and the only reason I didn't go to UTA was the same reason as Alex. I wanted to get a little bit farther away from home. So I went to college at Abilene Christian University, and then went to law school at Texas Tech School of Law, which I enjoyed. And I always knew I wanted to be an attorney. And then, as I was working my way towards it, then I figured, prosecution was the right path for me. It was the thing that interested me the most, and it still holds my interest, all these years later. No other lawyers in my family. My parents graduated graduated college right about the time I was. They went back to school and finished up, so didn't have a lot of people ahead of me that really knew the path ahead. And so I just had to ask a lot of questions, ask for a lot of help, and that's what I encourage you guys to do. Like Alex, I started with the district attorney's office at the bottom. You start off doing small cases, misdemeanors, DWIs, fist fights, and stuff like that. And I worked my way up through felony district courts. Organized crime is basically higher level drug prosecutions. I've worked in public integrity division, where we investigate police brutality and misuse of force, that sort of thing. And now I'm an administrative chief with our office. I supervise our family violence division and some of our trial felony courts. And so, It's an interesting job that I still love, and I'm happy that I'm here to have the chance to talk with you about it.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about all of your perspectives thus far on basically everything that's going on. I know a lot of students have approached me with questions that I believe you guys are actually seeing on a day-to-day basis. So I'm looking forward to your presentations. Last but not least, we have attorney Patrick Wilson. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, everybody. This is kudos to all of you who are getting your education in this format, because it's a different way of learning for sure. I am the elected district attorney in Ellis County. That's Waxahachie, just south of Arlington. My office has 45 employees. Approximately 17 of those are assistant attorneys, or assistant DAs, and we do everything from justice of the peace prosecution to capital murder, to representing the Department of Family and Protective Services, juvenile prosecution. We also serve as the in-house counsel for the county, for county government, essentially. This is a job I've had for 10 years. This is my 10th and final year as the elected DA. I decided not to seek re-election. I've been a prosecutor in this office for about over 20 years. I've been a professional prosecutor for about 22. But when you factor in my internships and part-time jobs during law school, I've been in this business for about 27 years. And kind of like Sunni said, the time really does fly. I am not like all these others who say they knew at an early age what they wanted to do. I kind of still jokingly say I'm one of those people that still doesn't know what I want to do when I grow up. My last semester in college, I went to Texas A&M. My last semester there, I took the GMAT, the GRE, and the LSAT. I ultimately landed on law school at Texas Tech, and I was enrolled in the joint MBA JD program when I started there. I had every intention of becoming a rich international corporate lawyer, because I had studied a lot of Spanish in high school and in college. I can't speak it very well now, but NAFTA had just come online, and so I thought, yeah, I'll be a fluent international trade lawyer. And then, short version, I got exposed to prosecution in a couple of different respects. My first year of law school, my team won the 1L mock trial competition. A lot of people thought I should have won Best Orator or Orator, and I didn't. But anyway, that was the bug that bit me in short, and here I am 20-something years later, and it's worked out pretty well for me. And there's never any shortage of fascinating stories in this profession. I guarantee you, we always joke as prosecutors, we hands down have the best stories to tell at parties. Hands down, no doubt about it. I have personally done everything from traffic tickets to capital murder. I've even witnessed an execution down in Huntsville. That was a profound experience for me a few years ago. But I've got a career's worth of stories and experience to share, and I'd be happy to do that with you before I start my next chapter at the end of the year. So looking forward to this experience.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I'm actually looking forward to hearing some of the secrets revealed during your presentation. Now we'll go ahead and turn it over to attorney Alexandra Guio. Once again, if anyone has any questions throughout, feel free to just leave them in the chat. We will address every question you put out there. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do is we're going to maybe just go one by one. We're going to go into detail about our really specific paths on how we got here. I really just want to let you guys know that when I was in college, at least, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have, my parents, we were all immigrants. So we were all from Colombia, and I didn't have, parents to ask like, how do you do this? Or how do you become a lawyer? Or what does that path look like? So I had a lot of just anxiety and fears about thinking that there was definitely like one specific path that you had to do it. Like there was, you know, kind of just one way to do things. And now that I'm in the profession, I look around at, you know, my colleagues and my friends, and everyone has very many different stories and different majors. And so I think back and I'm like, man, I really could have slept better in college and given myself less gray hairs had I known that it really, there's no one right way. So I kind of wanted to share a little bit about my path, and hopefully you can kind of see the different paths between me and Jerry and Sunny and Patrick, and know that the diversity within all of our paths, that's normal. That's really just the way that it is. And that's probably in any field, even if you decide not to do a legal field or prosecution, it's totally, totally fine. So I moved here when I was 4 from Bogota, Colombia. So growing up, I grew up in Katy. It was a big football town. And so when I went to UT Arlington, I really relied a lot on my professors. I relied a lot on different organizations, and they had a lot of different flyers. One of the different organizations that I had gotten to luckily be made aware about was one called CLEO, that's CLEO, and I think it's the Council for Legal Education Opportunity. And they provided free basically educational opportunities about the LSAT course, about how to apply for law school, basically free LSAT test, practice test. There were different courses that you could apply for so that you could go and learn how to write your personal statement. And so there were different things that I did because, again, I didn't have anyone to ask. So once I kind of like learned, again, I had asked different people, I felt a little bit more comfortable. But because I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor, I really thought I had to be like the best at that specific area of, you know, that subject. So I studied criminal justice and criminology, and psychology was my minor. And so it's kind of funny because when I got to law school, I think I had music majors and science majors, and I would just be like, oh my God, this whole time I thought I really had to be like on it about this one specific area. I really, you know, it doesn't matter what you major in. I think you should major in what you like to learn. I will tell you that law school is a lot of reading and writing. So if you want to be prepared for law school, maybe be an English major. That might be the best thing that can prepare you for law school. But there is no right or wrong major. At the end of the day, it's probably what you want to learn and be interested about. So looking back, that was something that I didn't have to do. Luckily, I liked the subject matter, so it was fine. One thing that I had a lot of anxiety about was thinking that I had to go straight through. Like I had to go and graduate and then immediately go straight into law school. And once I started really looking at the finances of law school, how expensive it was, it was a lot. And I just realized that I wasn't financially ready for it. And so I had just personally decided to take a year off. And also at the time, between middle school and my junior year in college, I was an undocumented student. So I didn't have my visa, I didn't have anything. And so I didn't have any scholarship money. And so by the time my junior year in college, I was able to get my residency. And so there was a period where I wanted to be able to time out when I was going to be able to apply for my citizenship. And so between my finances and knowing when I was going to be able to get my citizenship, graduate law school, and my goal was to eventually work for the district attorney's office, I was able to know, okay, that's going to be a 5-year period. I should just time all this out. I ended up making that decision after college to take a year off. I panicked in that moment, thinking that it was going to count against me. I was going to think like these law schools are going to think that I'm irresponsible, that I'm just out here like having a year off partying. It doesn't matter. Honestly, I got accepted to many law schools. I worked 2 jobs. I was much more stable in my finances. And honestly, when I got into law school, I was actually just personally more stable. I was kind of like out of my college party mode and more just personally ready and ready to just tackle on the seriousness of law school. And I know plenty of people who took off many years. I had met people at the time. SMU had a night program, and I know UNT Law now in Dallas has a part-time program, and it was their second career. So I'd taken many years off. So in hindsight, I wish I didn't have that anxiety of thinking that I was going to be penalized for taking a year off, that it just, whatever it is that's going on in your life, it is much better to be either financially or just personally in your life stable to start law school, because it is difficult. It is a very big decision, and you just want to be ready for it, both mentally and emotionally prepared for it. So I wish I just like didn't give myself so much grief for it. So yeah, that was kind of just one thing looking back that I wish I didn't freak out about. Also, I was really hesitant. When you apply for law school, they ask for what's called a personal statement. And that's really just something that is going to talk about yourself. They all ask for the same thing on the applications, just, very biographical information. And my personal statement, I was hesitant to talk about my life story. I didn't know whether I should talk about, whether I was an immigrant or whether I was undocumented, and kind of that whole journey. It was just something I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about. And now looking back, it is something that I just embrace. It's my journey. It's my life. It's honestly that those obstacles that were in my life and how I overcame them is how it's made me the woman that I am today. It's why I work so hard. It's why it's given me my work ethic. It's how it's given me my perseverance. And so I think when you start thinking about, if you are thinking about applying for law school and you think about a personal statement, don't shy away from who you are. Don't shy away from any struggle that you might have gone through. I think that if there is any type of vulnerability that you have gone through and you share that with a law school in an application, I think that is actually showing them your strengths, that you are setting yourself apart. Again, these are just little things that I thought at the moment, because I didn't have anybody else to ask, that I was kind of stressing out about. And it was kind of things that I didn't need to really stress out about. And at the time I also didn't have Google, right? Like there wasn't Google where I could just like type something in and like the answer would come up. So you guys kind of have it a little bit easier than I did. But I think that you should also have either a group of friends or a family member to where you have someone who's reading what it is that you're typing. I was kind of just like too embarrassed to ask for like help, and thinking like this kind of mindset of I'm not good enough type situation. And so I think if you step outside of that and think, you know, you can do this, this is not something that's impossible, it happens all the time, you can do it. And this is kind of why we wanted to do this panel, was to show you just that there is a variety of ways to get to your goal. And so hopefully, again, I really want you guys to ask questions. Trust me, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If you guys want to stay after, if you guys want to type them privately to your, you know, advisor or professor, and then she types them for you, whatever it is, please ask them. That is why we're here, so that you guys can get some form of guidance. If this is kind of the profession that you're looking to go into, that's why we're here. So hopefully my story is helpful for y'all, and I'll pass it on to the next person.
I think that would be me. Hi guys, again, I'm Sunni Mitchell, and it was great to hear your story, Alex. Thank you for sharing that with us. My parents came over from India shortly before I was born, actually shortly before my brother was born, who's a little bit older than me. I was born, as I mentioned, in New York, in upstate New York, but we moved to Kansas when I was 3 years old, so I really don't remember living in New York. I grew in Kansas City. Me, my brother, my parents, the Midwest was, you know, very nice place to grow up. Went to high school thinking that I wanted to be a teacher, which I think a lot of little girls grow up thinking they want to be teachers. And then I started working retail and became interested in retail and thought I wanted to become a business major and get my MBA and ultimately do something in that field. So I went not far from home, 45 minutes away, far enough away that my parents didn't know what I was doing, but close enough that I could go home to do laundry and get money from them. So I went to University of Kansas, which was a great experience. Very quickly, as soon as I took my first statistics class, realized I had no business being a business major. So I switched my major my sophomore year to psychology, then thinking I was going to be a clinical psychologist. While I was taking some of those psychology classes, there was a professor that came in and spoke about juvenile law. And I was really impacted by her and started thinking about law school at that point. Found out that KU had a hidden major called Crime and Delinquency Studies, which I then added as a second major, and there was a lot of overlap between the classes. So I was still able to get both bachelor's in 4 years, and decided then that I was going to go to law school. Once again, though, not really seeing myself being a prosecutor. I wish I had this great story like some of these guys do about knowing from a very young age that this is what I wanted to do. But I was afraid of public speaking, terrified by it. And so I really thought I was going to be a paper pushing, rich corporate lawyer. So I got to law school. I decided to kind of apply everywhere, step out of my comfort zone of staying in Kansas, because I thought I would ultimately end up back there to live. So I applied to a lot of schools, some of which I didn't get into, but SMU was one of the schools I got into. I liked Dallas. I liked how I was welcomed at that school when I went to visit, and so I went to SMU. Law school was not a great experience for me. It is tough. It's really different from what I had learned in college and the method of learning that I was used to. But we do a moot court competition our first year. As 1Ls, you have to participate in this moot court competition. And I did it, and my partner had to drop out very early on because of a death in the family. And so I ended up taking on both roles and finishing that moot court competition. And I didn't win, but I did pretty well in it and sort of got bitten by that advocacy bug. So then my second year, I participated in our inter-school mock trial competition and really enjoyed that, and ended up doing that as a third year as well, and also got onto our school's traveling team to do the national mock trial competition. And that's where I sort of got bitten by the advocacy bug and said, okay, this is what I think I want to do. SMU at that time had a criminal clinic that I participated in, and they didn't have an internship program back then that they did with the DA's office. So you were paired with a criminal defense lawyer. And I got to go down to the courthouse and try a couple of cases. I did a theft, both misdemeanors, a theft with a lawyer sitting next to me, and a DWI. And I really enjoyed both of them. We won both of the trials. But in going through the process, I just kept thinking, I want to be over where those prosecutors are. I want to be doing their job. That was the job that I felt like I was made to do. And I still remember those lawyers. I remember their faces because they had a big impact on me. And that was when I said, okay, I think I want to be a prosecutor. So it really wasn't until my third year in law school that I figured out that's what I wanted to do. I met my husband in law school. He had a job in Houston, which is what took us down to Houston. When I graduated law school, only 30% of our class had jobs. The market was saturated, the economy wasn't doing great, and so I didn't have a job when I got out of law school. So I did contract work with Pennzoil for about a year until I could get on with the DA's office in Houston. So then I started there, and I, like I said, started a misdemeanor, continued to rise through the ranks. As you get promoted, you start handling more serious cases. Ultimately became a chief prosecutor in 2001, and that's when you start handling capital murder cases, death penalty, non-death penalty, murders, other serious things. I was a chief for about 11 years and then got promoted to division chief in 2012, and that's when I started supervising lawyers. And a lot of times when folks become a division chief, they stop trying cases themselves, but I really, really love being in the courtroom. So I continued to try cases as a division chief there as well. And so it's been just an amazing, amazing job. And I was fortunate in that I had folks, parents that had the ability to fund my education. And so I found myself going straight through because I was kind of raised with my parents. I didn't know, and you guys will probably laugh if I could hear you laugh, I'd hear you laugh. I didn't know college was optional until I was a junior in high school. I had no idea. I just assumed college was something you had to do after high school. And my parents kind of raised us that graduate school really wasn't an option either. It was just what kind of graduate school you wanted to do. And so I just had in my mind, I was going to go straight through and I was going to finish and I was going to do it because I really was afraid if I didn't, I wouldn't go back. But I definitely agree with Alex that I found that the people that took time off and really went back because it was what they were passionate about and what they really wanted to do, I found them to be some of our most dedicated students in my law school class because it was something they were choosing, not something that they just kind of had to do because their parents wanted them to go to school. And so I really admired those folks and admired their dedication, which I think was stronger than mine. I just wasn't as disciplined a student as I probably needed to be because education had come very easy to me before, and I didn't have to work that hard to do well. And in law school, I did have to work really hard, and I still struggled to do well. But once I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor, I started focusing in the third year with just doing more of the practical things, doing the mock trials, the moot courts, internships, things that kind of showed people that I knew how to do the work. And I have tremendously enjoyed, as evidenced by the almost 27 years, the job I do. I truly think it is the best job in the world. Patrick mentioned we tell the best stories. I think that's absolutely true. But I also think what we do is so rewarding. Not only just getting to get justice for a victim or justice for the family that's left behind when a victim is killed, but also the justice that you give to a defendant. I found my trial experiences, where I may get a life sentence to be extremely rewarding, but I also found it really rewarding to sit there with a young 17 or 18-year-old defendant sitting across from me, talking to him about what he may have done and deciding that a pretrial diversion is appropriate because he doesn't need to be tagged with a criminal conviction. He doesn't need to be a statistic in the system because I think that we can fix whatever the problem was. And to see the relief and the gratitude that comes from that part of our job is so rewarding as well. Dismissing a case because it's just not in the interest of justice to pursue a prosecution, or dismissing a case because a person was wrongfully accused is so rewarding. And you just, I hate to use the word power, but the power that you hold it's an awesome power, and it's really, really rewarding to use that discretion ethically and to do the right thing, be it getting justice for a victim by a prosecution of a defendant that needs to be locked up for the rest of his life, but also that dismissal or that pretrial diversion for a defendant who shouldn't be charged or who shouldn't become a statistic in the system. So, I mean, all I can say, I'm happy, just like Alex, to answer any questions any of you all have. I have loved every minute of every day of this job that I have done, and I can't recommend it more. So that's my spiel.
All right, thanks, Sunny. I won't be super long, but I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about how I got to where I am. And I think Alex has hit it right on the head that there are many ways to get to the same place or even to different places within the same profession. You know, my dad is from Liberia, West Africa, and he came to this country when he was an adult, met my mom who was from West Texas. They ended up working their way down to, you know, Arlington, where I was born in Grand Prairie and grew up, you know, going to Arlington schools and all of that. But I didn't know anybody that was an attorney. And so, you know, I think a combination of things got that in my mind that that's what I wanted to do. One, my parents used to tell me all the time, you love arguing, you should be a lawyer. And, you know, I've come to find out, I don't think the best lawyers make just, you know, good arguers. They help people reach consensus. But that kind of got stuck in my head a little bit. And the other thing was a movie that probably came out when you younger ones, probably before your parents ever met, A Few Good Men, you know, with Tom Cruise, who still looks the same now as he did then almost. But I watched that movie, and, you know, I watched that and I watched him, you know, cross-examine Jack Nicholson, and I thought I could do that, you know. And then, you know, I want to be a prosecutor. When you go back and watch that movie, he was actually a defense attorney. So I figured that out years later, but that did put the bug in my head that I didn't like, you know, people hurting other people, doing bad things, and I wanted to do something about it. And so I basically knew I wanted to be a prosecutor at some point. I was probably 13 or 14 years old. And so I knew I wanted to go to law school after college. I went to college out in Abilene. And, you know, I'm kind of like Patrick, that I didn't know exactly how to go about it. I knew I wanted to go to law school, so I asked questions around the campus, some of the advisors and professors there. I chose political science as my major because, one, I loved history and reading and you know, learning how to write about things. But I also hated math, and so they told me that was one credit. Like, you only had to take one math class if you're a political science major. So I knew I wanted to go to law school and did that. And so I took the LSAT. I applied only to a couple colleges. This is one point where I'll give a little bit of advice. I would say cast a wide net, you know, think big, dream big about what school you want to go to. I was the exact opposite. I was kind of like what I think this was Alex that said, that always feeling like you weren't going to be good enough, or, hey, if I stray too far from my plans, it's not going to work out. So I only applied to a couple law schools and got into both. And so I went to Texas Tech School of Law. But if I had to do over again, I would have cast that wide net and just seen, you know, and opened myself up to different possibilities. But I enjoyed law school. I'm a bit different than Sunny. I actually, you know, it's very difficult. Law school is very difficult, but I enjoyed it. One, because I felt like, well, more people are there that really want to be there than when in college, you know, you got a lot of people there to party, right? But, you know, and I just, you know, I think it suited my personality a little bit better. You know, there's fewer tests all the time. You just show up every day, you learn, you discuss things, you listen to lectures, and you'll have a test at the end, and I enjoyed it. But I will say this about law school, and this is the advice I give, you know, students or interns that I have all the time. They will give you a reason to quit if you want to quit, you know, so go into it. If you want to finish and you want that degree, just make up your mind that you're doing it no matter what, because the way law school is set up, and it's very competitive and repetitive at times. They'll make you want to quit if you want to. And so after I got out of law school, I came back. I always knew I wanted to work for the Tarrant County District Attorney's Office. You know, I'm a Tarrant County person. I spent very little time in Dallas growing up. I had interned in Tarrant County, which I suggest to anyone, go intern and decide to take a look at different areas of law. If you're interested in something you don't know a lot about it, go intern there first. Don't try to go get a job somewhere that you never set foot in or don't know anybody who's worked there before. I'd interned in Tarrant County a couple summers, but the economy hit me back in 2004 too. they were in a hiring freeze and they didn't have any openings. So I went and interviewed at Dallas County. They did have an opening. I had never set foot in that building. I knew a couple people that had worked there before, and they liked it. And so I asked them questions about the office, and they told me about the atmosphere and the expectations that they would have for me. And I thought it would be the right fit. I got hired on, and things work out the way they should. About a month in at Dallas County, Tarrant County called me back and said, "Hey, we have an opening now. Would you like to come and interview, one final interview for a job?" And I said, "No, I already have a gig, just, out of loyalty to them in Dallas." And, in Tarrant County, they've had turnover and issues there that I don't know that I would have made it this far. In Dallas, I've worked my way up to the top of our office. And so I'm a firm believer that things work out the way they should. And that, I'm a prime example that if I can make it, anybody can, because I did not grow up with lawyers in the family or knowing, very much about the path once you were in law school or once you got into the profession. And I was just able to pick it up and learn from other people. Within my district attorney's office, I think Alex explained it, so I won't belabor it much. You work your way up from the bottom. I got to start off with smaller cases, and that's a good place to learn what your skills are, to learn what, suits you, what you think you're good at, what you think works for you. I always want to be a trial attorney, so I always think of things in terms of what works in front of a jury and public speaking and talking to people. And so you learn what really works for you, like your style, because everyone has a different style. Alex is a great attorney, but she and I have different styles. We're going to say the same thing different ways. We're going to approach things different ways. And, you're going to hear us talk about diversity a lot when we're talking to you today. And I think that's a key point. It's not just diversity in terms of people or ethnicity or background, but it's also diversity of thought. That, being in prosecution is a big job. Our office is a very large office. There's like 240 attorneys or so, something like that, almost 500 people overall in the staff. And, we have lots of different personality types, lots of different people doing the same job different ways, and lots of different jobs within that office. I interned when I was in in law school, in the juvenile section over in the Lubbock County District Attorney's Office. So I got to see that side of it. But here I do felony stuff with adults, and I've got to try and be around every kind of case you can think of, and even some kinds you can't think of. And it's been a rewarding experience. And so I appreciate y'all having us here today. And I hope that you'll hold on to our information. We're all a part of the Diversity, Retention, and Recruitment Committee with TDCAA. And, our purpose and our mission is to spread awareness and interest in our profession, because it needs all types of people to make it work properly. When I started in 2004, I was one of the few Black prosecutors in our office, and it's a very large office. And so if I go into somewhere and I felt like I grew up in Arlington with all, in the public schools there. I went to Arlington High. It was the demographics are a lot different than it was then. And so for me to notice and look around and say, there's not very many of us, in this profession. And now that has changed over the years, but we have to be purposeful about keeping that diversity and inclusion a part of these offices, because this summer is a perfect example of why you want diversity of viewpoint when you're dealing with issues surrounding the criminal justice system. So thank you again for having me, and I'll turn it over to Patrick.
My path probably is more similar to Sunni than the others. There were no lawyers in my family, frankly. As I look back on growing up, I don't recall ever knowing any lawyers, period. So I went to Texas A&M, and I was a business major for about 2.5 years, accounting specifically. And I vividly remember reading the newspaper one day, and I have read the newspaper regularly since I was about 18 years old. And I remember thinking, there's one section of the paper that I always tossed to the side, and that was the business section. That's when newspapers were larger than they are now. And so I realized maybe I shouldn't be a business major. So I explored some different alternatives. I thought I wanted to go be a journalist at that point, but the classes were sequential, and I would have had to stay in college much too long to do that. So I settled on speech communication, which is a liberal arts degree. And while people will joke and say that's kind of a worthless degree, and in many respects, I guess you could say it is. It at least opened my eyes to, I think, the benefit of a liberal arts education. I really do think there's a lot of value to that. And I like somebody else said, and I'm confused exactly as to who said what. I think you should use college as an opportunity to expose yourself to a diversity of ideas and thoughts and disciplines, and not necessarily limit yourself to whatever your academic pursuit is, what you think you need to do. I got a liberal arts degree, and as I said, my last semester of college, I took the GMAT, the GRE, and the LSAT because I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. But I did know, kind of like Sunni, that I was going to continue my education some way, somehow. My thought process was like hers, frankly, is that I just needed to get it done because I figured if I ever left, I wouldn't come back. But I also agree, though, that those non-traditional students in law school, the ones who left for a while and came back, they tended to perform very well because they were very disciplined. Having said that, I had a hell of a good time in law school. I mean, academically, it was very challenging, but socially, it was one of the greatest times of my life. We had a really fun group when I was there, and you kind of bond through that experience. But it was a challenge for sure. School, by and large, was always pretty easy for me growing up. Through high school and even in college, to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't have to put in a whole lot of effort to make decent grades. And I vividly remember sitting in law school classes, and it's that Socratic method where the professor will call on people, and I would hear other people's answers, and I distinctly remember thinking to myself, I am no longer the smartest guy in the room. And that was kind of a humbling experience. But it is certainly a challenge. My last summer of college, I interned at the Brazos County DA's office, and my first taste of criminal justice was there. And the thing that probably hooked me originally was seeing crime scene photos. The chief investigator there was a retired homicide detective from Houston, and he had some old crime scene photos, and there was a crime scene photo that he showed us of a decapitated body. And there was a female intern standing there with me when we saw the pictures, and our reactions could not have been more opposite. I was immediately gripped by it, and she was immediately repulsed by it. From there, when I started law school, I ultimately got a job at the Lubbock DA's office for a couple of years there. I was a clerk in the appellate division. Excuse me. And honestly, it wasn't until I did the mock trial and got that exposure that I thought I could pursue prosecution as a career. Even when I started prosecution, though, honestly, I really thought I would do it just for a few years and then go make money. And there were a couple of times in my career where I did make those attempts. I did leave for a very short period and set up my own shop, but I quickly realized you've got to like what you do. And I came back and I made a subsequent attempt to leave and kind of put some feelers out for a job and had a lead on a pretty good job in a civil firm, and ultimately, again, decided you've got to like what you do. And as I look back on my career, there have been very few days where I didn't like what I do. It's been a very rewarding career. I will tell you regarding the path of education, I'm fortunate that I got my education done before the Texas legislature removed the caps on tuition. It still took me about 9 years to pay off my student loans. I know the cost of education has skyrocketed since then, and that is a significant factor for you to consider. And so the idea of taking some time off and getting your finances squared away, I promise I don't have the COVID, that makes a lot of sense these days. And I do agree with the idea, I think Jerry mentioned it, that before you pursue law school, try to expose yourself to the profession as much as possible. Knock on some doors, see if you can spend some time in a court or in a law office. I had worked as a file clerk at a big law firm in Dallas between college and law school for about 9 months. That gave me a taste of that world. It gave me enough of a taste to realize I probably wasn't cut out for that. Similarly, when I started at the Dallas DA's office, that's where I got my first job. I pretty quickly realized I was better suited to be a big fish in a small pond. Waxahachie's my hometown, and so when an opportunity came open here, I jumped at it. Obviously, it's worked out well for me, but Sunni was right. The job of a prosecutor is the same all over Texas, but Texas has 254 criminal justice systems. because there are 254 counties. And the job of a prosecutor is vastly different depending on the size of the office. I'm a lawyer, so I could talk all day long and tell you war stories, and I think you would really like them, and we could all go around the room and you'd probably like every one of our war stories, but in the interest of time, and I know to answer some questions, I'm just going to end it right there and open it up for Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations and just sharing your stories and opening up. I know one of the hardest things to do is to talk about yourself. Maybe not for a lawyer. I like talking about myself. So I think we like talking about ourselves. But one question that did pop up in the Q&A, many of you, I think all of you had experience with mock trial. And one of the students asked, since mock trial and moot court spurned your passion for advocacy, what led you to going the prosecutor route? Why not be a defense attorney?
I'll be happy to tackle that. And that reminds me to tell you back on my decision, it may very well have been a desire to do trial work more than the mission of prosecution that initially drew me to the profession, to be honest with you. And there is no comparison, none whatsoever. If you like trial work, if you think you want to be a trial lawyer, then be a prosecutor. No lawyer, none whatsoever, including defense attorneys, gets in the courtroom, gets in front of juries, gets to do the thing that you see on TV and in the movies as much as a prosecutor. There's no comparison. And any defense lawyer that tells you otherwise is full of it, to be honest with you. And more importantly, I'm not certainly responsible for this quote, but some judge once upon a time at some conference, and I think as prosecutors, we've all heard this, prosecutors see that more justice is done by 9 a.m. than a defense attorney does all week long. I guarantee you that. So that's my response to the question.
And I'm going to kind of agree with everything Patrick said. I can tell you initially mine was prosecution because those 2 trials I told you I did were situations where I knew the defendants were guilty. I wanted us to zealously represent them and defend their interests and their constitutional rights, and we did. But it just made me feel like, well, wait a minute, I want to be on the side of those prosecutors who were actually doing the prosecuting. And like Patrick said, we do more justice before 9 a.m. because, as I had mentioned before, we are prosecuting and trying to keep the citizens safe, but we are still protecting the defendant's rights and abiding by the Constitution every moment that we do our jobs. And so I feel like it's a win-win. I mean, it's where my passion is. I agree with Patrick. I want to do work that I love and enjoy, and that's why for me.
Sorry, I was slow to my mute button. I'm sorry. Okay, really quickly. I know a lot of people will have questions about internships, and they're probably a little too shy to ask questions like that. How did you guys get internship opportunities? For those of you who knew that they wanted to be lawyers, how did you get them in college? For those of you who didn't, how did you go about hunting them when you actually started down this career path?
Okay, I don't mind jumping in on that one. The law schools are pretty good at it back then, but they're getting way better at it now through their career services department to point you in directions of internships and helping you apply for those things. So whether it be in your college years or when you get to law school, work through them. I think, was it Sunni, you mentioned being a part of a clinic, and a clinic is basically just a chance where you get some hands-on experience and classroom time, all for the same, college law school credits. And so that's how I was able to intern with the Lubbock County District Attorney's Office. But then there's people that have done it here in Dallas. And so jump in a clinic. If, there's very few prosecution clinics out there right now. The real hot thing, everybody wants to start their own innocence project, which that there is merit to that for sure. But I wish we had a few more of those. So if y'all want to start one, maybe I'll partner with you guys and start one up or something. But involve yourself in those things. Involve yourself in clinics, internships. If you know someone from an office, go ahead and just call up our office on our website. There's links there that tells you how to apply. And, the other way to do it is just the old-fashioned way, ask for someone's card, ask for their phone number, and ask them about internships, about, from the places where they work. and see where you can get your foot in the door. Because I know tons of people, and Alex will tell you the truth. When we look around our organizational chart and see all of our prosecutors, a vast majority were interns at some point. You know, you show your face, show what you can do, and it gets your foot in the door.
Yeah, and I would say don't limit yourself to just the big offices. I think a lot of people tend to just gravitate to those, thinking, oh, you know, I got to get on at Dallas or Tarrant County. There are a lot of offices in this North Texas area. Cold calling is effective for an internship. Just drop resumes off, mail them in. Snail mail gets people's attention more so than an email these days. And Jerry mentioned earlier, you know, things just work out. When I got a job at a big law firm in Dallas, I graduated from college in December, started law school the following fall. I thought, well, I need to fill up my time. Maybe I should get a job.
Hey, did we lose your audio, Patrick?
Patrick, we're struggling to hear you.
He's giving us some heat too.
I know, it's great information. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Shoot, I know that was gold.
See if you can unmute him again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. Hurry and say it before your computer.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, no.
No, I can't hear you. I'm gonna have to log off and log back on.
Okay, well, we hear you.
Well, hey, there is a question in the chat
no.
that we're gonna take. It says, as a prosecutor, how do you determine which cases to prosecute? You know, yeah, well, you know, Patrick being an elected, I'll let him speak to it when he jumps back on. But, you know, for the most part, your elected district attorney will kind of set the tone for what, you know, what is going to be a priority for their office. But, you know, one great thing, depending on what county you're in and who you work with, once you do get to that point where you do have a level of discretion, you know, I personally view it as, what do I think I can actually prove? What do I think is right in a case? You know, we're always working under our burden of proof. Could we actually show this to a jury or judge and get a conviction? But also, what is right under the circumstances? So, you know, it's a lot of things, and it would take forever to explain all the things that go into determining how do you prosecute a case. But I like to try to keep it very simple. Like, I like to think about what I can prove and what I think is actually right or fair in a specific circumstance.
Yeah, and just to echo off that, anytime I'm training somebody, it's like a two-pronged test. I say, can you legally do this? And should you do this, right? At the end of the day, we are lawyers. And so I want to make sure that that they know the law, that younger prosecutors, even myself, that we look at the law, that we look at the penal code, you know, can we do this? You know, are we legally able to do this? In the intake division, when agencies submit the cases to us, that's what we're looking for. We're looking at the penal code, making sure, does this check all the boxes, right? As a prosecutor, once a case is in front of us, it is our decision. Victims sometimes think that they can drop the case or they want to drop the case. And it's kind of misleading. It's actually up to the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the one who makes that determination whether or not to proceed on the case. And so that's why we kind of decide, you know, should we proceed on it? Is this something that's fair? Is this something that we think that we can kind of do? I know that Sunni mentioned that, you know, sometimes what's doing justice for a defendant is a dismissal. Are we talking about a young defendant who needs help? Are we talking about someone who needs a diversion program? Are we talking about someone who needs to be placed on probation? Are we talking about somebody who has an addiction? And so sometimes, you know, like Jerry said, we could go on and on about what prosecuting actually means. But to answer that question is more a legal and then kind of a should we, and then how can we handle this in the best way possible? You know, our oath as prosecutors is not to seek convictions. It really is to make sure that we seek justice. So that is our main goal, and that's our goal of our job. Patrick, you're back.
thought everybody was just really enjoying my story. You all got so animated.
Oh, we did. We're like, no.
He blew out his speakers. Yeah.
Well, if you want to share what you were saying, it sounded like it looked like it was great.
Well, I don't know where I got cut off, but just quickly, Jerry mentioned you never know how things are going to work out. I got a job at a big law firm in Dallas between college and law school. By printing out a stack of resumes, literally going door to door on foot, showing up at the receptionist desk, asking for a job of any sort. I ultimately got one at what was a big law firm at the time, Strasburger and Price. I was the low man on the totem pole for 9 months, a file clerk. That's what I was. It just turned out by coincidence, my supervisor, who was a legal secretary, her husband was then the chief investigator at the Dallas DA's office. I maintained a relationship with her during my law school career, and it was through that connection that I was able to get on at the Dallas DA's office. So you just never know how life is going to turn out.
Very good.
So you got to take the initiative.
I like that. I think that's the main message that everyone should take away. The initiative is truly yours to take. No one is in this world is going to give you anything. So, really quickly, I had a student that reached out that wanted to ask her question aloud. So, Miss Karen, Michael, please go ahead and ask the group your question.
Yes, Alexandra, Jerry, Sunny, Patrick, thank you for your time and your insight. It was definitely very helpful, and I was able to relate to a lot of y'all's experience. I did have one question that consists of 2 parts. Now, I know as students were, in an effort to try to not be stagnant or undirected, we are constantly encouraged to plan ahead and plan forward and figure out what we want to do. And sometimes within that process, we lose sight of exactly what we're passionate about or what we exactly want to do. And I believe that within the journey of many aspiring lawyers, they usually feel a little anxious or confused about what they want to do specifically. So my question for you is, what advice would you give aspiring lawyers who have anxiety about the law school process or the area of specialization they want to be in general, or if law is what exactly they want to do? Because for me, I mean, Alexandra, I related to you as well. I related to all of you. I mean, I'm a proud daughter of immigrants from Egypt. So we are familiar with the law process, but not necessarily experienced in law in general as a career field. And so what advice would you give to someone who has an idea of what they might possibly want to do, but is unsure just yet?
Well, for sure, you want to find an internship, find someone to shadow just to see what the actual job is day to day and see if that's something you want to do. But also the advice I always give is you got to remember the things you're passionate about. You may not be able to get to do that day one. You got to, it's a dues paying thing sometimes if you're going to be within a prosecutor's office or just about any profession. And especially in law school, you're going to do some stuff you don't feel like doing to get to where you want to go. So you can't let those things along the way deter you and say, well, because, in law school, you're preparing for the bar exam. So you're going to take classes that you're not interested in at all. Like I had to take oil and gas for a whole semester because it was going to be on the bar exam for one question for like 1 hour and a half. And so I had to take a whole semester of oil and gas when I am never going to do another fraction in my life. I knew I wasn't going to work around an oil well or anything like that, but you're just going to have to, pay those dues. But really getting back to how do you know what the profession is like? Go and actually get around people who are actually doing it. And, some people will be jaded by their experiences. You don't want to let that rub off on you, but you do want to take a realistic measure of what the job actually is. The short story I'll tell, because I know we're short on time, is I had an intern come that was interested in prosecution, and she wanted to know all about it because she wanted to do big cases and murder cases and stuff. And she came and asked me, well, can you take me down to the medical examiner's office to the morgue and see an autopsy? I said, sure. I'm so desensitized to all that stuff. It doesn't bother me at all. Well, I took her there and I'm like, okay, well, we're basically getting started. In the first 10 minutes, she said, can we leave? And it's not going to be your experience on the first day to see that kind of stuff, but it was good for her to know, I thought this was for me, but maybe it's not, and so get around people that are doing the job and then see if it suits you.
And on that note, let me just throw out an ad. There are a limited number, of course, of paid internships and a limited number of academic internships. If you've got the luxury, go shadow somebody, as Jerry said. Nobody's going to turn down free help. And so if you say, let me just follow you, we had interns that literally just volunteered their time, and you may not have the luxury of doing that full time because you need to work and make some money too, but get a job doing something 30, 40 hours a week and spend 10 hours a week, during the summer at a DA's office volunteering, or with a criminal defense attorney volunteering, because like Jerry said, you're never going to know that that's exactly what you want to do until you actually see what's being done. Because we all know what you see on TV and in the movies isn't real life, like A Few Good Men, right?
Yes, and come down. These courthouses are open. If you're thinking of the criminal
Right.
side of it, well, not open now, not because of COVID, but when in the normal times, go and sit and watch a trial. This happens to us every once in a while. We'll sit there, we'll have a trial, and during the break, somebody with a clipboard comes up and asks us, "Hey, I'm a student from such and such. And ask about the case, ask about law school." I'm happy to do that. I think most people would be. I think a lot of people that are proud of their jobs love, evangelizing about it and getting more people into the profession. So just, get around those situations where you can, and people are happy to answer questions.
Yeah, my quick answer to that would just be take it one day at a time. My mom would tell me it's a marathon, it is kind of from point A to point B, right? It seems like forever away. But it's just one day at a time, make yourself kind of these short-term goals. Okay, from this year to this year, from this summer to summer, I kind of have to just accomplish this, or by, this semester, let me look into this. So take it one day at a time, piecemeal it, and it won't seem so overwhelming. In terms of like your second question of like what kind of law, just like they said, look into it, kind of get involved in it. I will say keep an open mind. Even though I knew I wanted to do prosecution, even certain fields within that, I got moved into the sexual assault division without any choice of mine. And when I first got in there, I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about this. I don't even know if I can handle it. I was very overwhelmed. I was almost nervous. And then it ended up being my favorite division that I'd ever been in. It was the most rewarding division I'd ever been in. And so just keep an open mind about things, try things out. Don't be afraid of certain topics just because, it might intimidate you. So piecemeal it one day at a time. You can do it, and just keep an open mind.
About the only thing I'll add is one of my favorite sayings is that life is what happens while you're making plans. And so, to piggyback on what Alex said, just don't sweat it too much, just take it. I think that's absolutely all right. Take it one day at a time. I know your generation is more beset by some cultural pressures for success and comparing each other. I think that's unfortunate. My words aren't going to change that. I can only hope that, you can equip yourself mentally and emotionally to deal with those pressures. But at the end of the day, you just got to do what you've got to do and what makes you happy as a person. And if you start laying out these 2, 3, 4, 5-year plans, that's just a recipe for stress and anxiety, and you will not enjoy life during that process. So just slow down and take a breath. And I can tell you this, and I guarantee you, Alex, Jerry, and Sunny will all back me up on this. We could all right now name lawyers that we know and we know well and think, that idiot did it.
Oh, yes, yes.
Right?
The bar exam is hard, but it ain't that hard. Yeah.
Right. Every day we see those lawyers that go, wow, that guy or girl got a bar license. Woo.
Yeah, and Patrick, you did say something funny about comparing yourself and worrying about what other people are doing. All these lawyers, with their arms crossed on Instagram in front of the courthouse, a lot of those people aren't as tough as they look. They're just, there's lots of good attorneys that are humble that you'll never even really know their names. They're not out there advertising the same way. Just don't ever be intimidated by when you're looking around what other people are doing. Set those small goals like Alex said, and I think you'll be just fine.
Yeah, just because a lawyer appears to be successful to you doesn't mean he or she is successful. It just means, or that he or she is a good lawyer. It just means they've convinced people that they're a good lawyer.
But so this last question before we adjourn, I think is really kind of on the nose of what's going on in the world. The world is upside down. There's so much social unrest, especially since the wrongful death of George Floyd. So many people now want to be activists and play an active role in what happens next. They want to shape the next chapter of the human race. So what do you all say about, not about, but what advice do you have to give all of our social justice warriors that are really now coming to the profession and the field based on what they're seeing in the world? And that's like a big question, and I'll give you guys a second to soak that in. But what advice do you have? Because they're coming in hot and they're ready to make a change. So any advice whatsoever for those?
Well, I would remind them that if you're talking about coming in, and I'll just take the view of prosecutor, you got to remember, if you're starting in, you're starting at the bottom of an organization, that you're going to be, you're going to have supervision, depending on the size of your office at multiple levels. Doesn't mean that someone's going to come in and start asking you to do stuff that you think is wrong or illegal or anything like that. But you have to have the mindset that you're not going to come in day one and set or change the policy of an office. Just like Patrick said, there are 254 different justice systems around this state. And so if you want to change, how things are done, one, you're going to think of your reach as somewhat local. And, then you take it, if you're in front of the legislature, now you can make it a statewide or even farther a national type of thing. But, remember, you're going to be starting off doing, the small stuff. And so within that small stuff, that's where if you have a change and you want to view things in terms of being more fair, more just, more equitable, then you got to start doing those on the little things that you're working on. And then you'll be trusted with those bigger things down the road. You're not going to be trying a murder case. You're not going to be dealing with a case. You're not going to be trying a police officer on a case when you first start out, or even in the first few years, maybe not even in the first 10 years. But you have to find those areas that you can be equitable and fair and just, and do that within the policies of whatever office that you're going to be working. Or you got to decide that that's not the office for me, if that they're not going to, if you have people that you feel like just view things just the wrong way, that you can't get on board with, you can't be in that office and do those things and also, complain about it and try to undermine people. You got to find the right place for you within the justice system and within the state.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'll say that, that saying goes that if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. I think it really starts at whatever level that you can. I think it starts with voting. I think you have to vote. I think you have to encourage your family and your friends and your neighbors to vote. You have to fill out the census. I think you have to educate yourself and your friends and your family about the importance of all of those things. The reason I say that is because that also leads to jury duty, and that leads to us, right? I think that people kind of roll their eyes when they see that jury summons in the mail. But for us, that is how we get justice. When we can't resolve our cases between the parties, both sides have a right to a jury trial. And both sides have a right to have that case tried before a jury of our peers. And many times we find it difficult to find a diverse set of jurors. And I think we need to encourage people to talk about that, to say that jury duty is very important and that people's lives and justice is something that should be decided by a diverse jury panel. And so if you want to talk about the importance of issues that have been going on this whole year, especially this summer, and as it relates to our job, then we should talk about the duties that we have as citizens. And so vote, fill out the census, and when our COVID times are over, and you get that jury summons, please be excited. And you'll see our smiling faces if you live in our counties. And I put my email, I know we're all putting our emails on there. I'm addicted to my email. I'm sure that's probably a bad thing. I know probably for me and many others, I love to mentor because so many people helped me get this far. And so if you have any questions, please email me. And thank you guys so much for joining us, and all my other panelists. Thank you guys for doing this for my alma mater. Thank you, thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for sharing all of your valuable experience and insight. For those of you that are watching this, your gracious panelists have put all of their contact information into the chat. So make sure you jot that down before you leave the room.
Hey, Amber,
yes.
I missed the group photo because I got dropped. Did you guys already do it?
So we took one with just us.
That's okay. That's okay.
But it was a lovely photo.
I'm
We
sure
can
it
do
was.
another one for sure.
It's okay. I was just wondering. Okay.
But yes, make sure you guys get down their information, make contact. Again, one of the main takeaways from this experience is they all worked hard to get where they are, but they made use of their connections and resources, and they're making themselves available to be connections and resources to you all. So take advantage of that. And with that, I will go ahead and end our presentation. Thank you once again, guys, for sharing your Friday afternoon with us. I really sincerely appreciate it, and the students appreciate it as well.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.